What would you do if the person you called your best friend was the one who destroyed your life? How well do you truly know the people who sleep in your house, eat at your table, and say they love you? And what happens when the very phone that was supposed to solve a case opens the door to something far darker than anyone imagined? On an ordinary Wednesday morning in Lagos, a man was found unconscious on the floor of his own home. The police assumed it was simple. They were wrong. Everything was at stake. His savings. His family. His name. His freedom. This isn't just a story about crime. It's a story about trust, betrayal, and the price of hidden truth. Before everything changed, there was Daniel Okafor. A hardworking man who believed that loyalty was the one thing money could never buy. He was about to learn how terribly wrong he was. Welcome to Stories by the King, where every truth demands to be heard. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your country in the comments. And if stories like this matter to you, please like and subscribe. It means everything. Because what happened next, no one expected. Daniel Okafor woke up every morning at 5:30. Not because he had to. Because he chose to. That was the kind of man he was, disciplined, deliberate, grateful. He lived in a modest two-bedroom flat in Surulere, Lagos, a neighborhood buzzing with energy from dawn to midnight. He worked as an accounts officer at a mid-sized construction company on Lagos Island, and every naira he earned honestly. He had no enemies, or so he believed. He had a fiancée named Grace, a mother he sent money to in Imo State every month, and a best friend named Victor who had been by his side since secondary school. Life was not perfect, but it was his. And he protected it carefully. Victor had moved into Daniel's flat 6 months earlier. He had lost his job at a logistics firm and needed somewhere to stay while he got back on his feet. Daniel did not hesitate. They had grown up together. They had shared food during hard times, laughed through worse times, and Victor had been the best man at Daniel's father's burial 3 years ago. Trusting Victor felt as natural as breathing. Grace had her concerns, small things she couldn't fully explain. The way Victor sometimes looked at Daniel's laptop when he thought no one was watching. The way he asked too many questions about Daniel's savings account. But she said nothing. She told herself she was imagining things. She told herself Victor was family. On a Thursday evening in April, Daniel received a transfer alert on his phone. Then another. Then a third. His chest tightened. He checked his account balance and felt the floor disappear beneath him. 472,000 naira gone. Every transaction had been initiated from a device he didn't recognize. But the authentication codes had been sent to his phone number. His actual phone number. He scrolled through his message history, trembling. The confirmation texts were there, time-stamped between 1:14 a.m. and 1:47 a.m. the night before. He had been asleep. He had not authorized anything. But somehow, someone had used his number to drain his account while he slept in his own home. He called the bank immediately. The customer care agent told him what he already feared: the transactions had been verified through a two-factor authentication process. His phone number had received the OTPs. The transfers had gone to 3 different mobile wallet accounts. Without a court order or police report, the bank could not reverse anything. His hands were shaking by the time he hung up. He walked to the sitting room. Victor was there, watching football, a bottle of cold malt in his hand, completely relaxed. Daniel stood in the doorway and looked at him for a long time. Victor turned, smiled, and said, "Guy, why you dey look me like that?" Daniel said nothing. He went back to his room and sat on the edge of his bed in the dark. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He went through every possibility in his mind. The bank. A hacker. A stranger. But something kept pulling his thoughts back to the same place. The OTPs had gone to his phone. His phone had been on the kitchen counter the previous night. He remembered leaving it to charge. He had gone to sleep around 11. Victor had been awake. Victor had said he was watching a late movie. Daniel opened his phone and checked the charging history. It showed his phone had been unplugged at 1:09 a.m. and plugged back in at 1:52 a.m. Someone had picked up his phone in the middle of the night. Someone who was inside the flat. And that someone had moved carefully, quietly, and deliberately, like a person who had planned it all along. Daniel did not confront Victor the next morning. He was afraid, not of Victor exactly, but of being wrong. Of destroying a friendship that had survived 15 years over a suspicion. So instead, he filed a police report at the Sorale division and submitted his bank statements. The officer on duty, a tired-looking man named Sergeant Adebisi, glanced at the documents and told Daniel these kinds of cases were hard to crack. "If fraud they everywhere," he said, almost yawning. He took down Daniel's details, stamped the report, and handed him a copy. As Daniel walked out of the station, he felt the weight of being alone in this. The police did not believe it was urgent. And the thief was still sleeping peacefully in his house. Grace pushed him to dig deeper. She was the one who called her cousin who worked in cybersecurity, a young man named Samuel who operated a small tech consulting firm in Ikeja. Samuel came over 2 evenings later and asked to see Daniel's phone. He spent 40 minutes going through logs, app permissions, and SIM card data. Then he looked up and asked a question that made Daniel's stomach drop: "Has anyone had physical access to your phone recently?" Because this wasn't done remotely. Someone used your SIM in your phone, manually. Daniel sat very still. Samuel continued. "They opened your banking app, requested OTPs, and completed the transfers in sequence. This took preparation. They knew your PIN." Daniel's face went cold. He had told only one person his phone PIN in recent memory. He had told Victor, months ago, casually, when he had asked Victor to check a message for him while his hands were full. Daniel began to watch Victor without showing it. He noticed things he had dismissed before. Victor's new shoes, expensive ones, the kind that cost 15,000 naira at least. A new wristwatch. He had mentioned money was tight, but he was buying things. Small things, but things nonetheless. Then one afternoon, Daniel came home early from work and found Victor on the phone, speaking in a low voice. Victor saw him and ended the call immediately. He laughed it off, said it was his sister. But Daniel had heard the conversation, barely a sentence, and Victor had said, "He doesn't know anything yet." Daniel said nothing. He smiled back. But inside, something had broken permanently. He went back to Sergeant Adebisi, but this time with Samuel's written technical report. The document outlined the digital footprint of the fraud clearly: physical device access, manual OTP capture, and 3 wallet accounts used as exit points. Adebisi read it differently this time. He picked up his phone and made 2 calls. Within 48 hours, the cybercrime unit of the Lagos State Police Command had been looped in. A detective named Inspector Folake Adikanal took charge of the case. She was sharp, methodical, and she asked Daniel one question immediately: "Who lives with you?" When Daniel told her about Victor, she nodded slowly and said, "Bring me his full name and a recent photograph." The night before Victor was called in for questioning, something happened that shifted everything. Daniel's phone rang at 11 p.m., a number he didn't recognize. He picked up. There was silence for a moment, then a male voice said, "Drop this case. You will not like what happens next." The call ended. Daniel stared at the screen, heart pounding. He called Inspector Adikana immediately. She listened and told him not to panic, but to document everything. "This call tells us one thing," she said. "Whoever did this is watching you. And they are scared." Daniel locked his bedroom door that night and lay in the dark, completely still, listening to every sound in the flat, including the soft footsteps that passed his door at midnight, paused briefly, then walked away. Inspector Adikana moved quickly. She obtained a warrant and had Victor's 2 mobile phones seized the following morning when he arrived at the cybercrime unit for what he had been told was a routine witness interview. Victor came in confidently, dressed well, smiling. He sat down across from the inspector and told her he was happy to help in any way he could, that Daniel was his brother and he wanted the thieves caught. He was still smiling when she placed his first phone face up on the table and slid it toward him. His smile didn't disappear immediately. It faded slowly, the way light fades when a cloud moves over the sun. What was on that phone was not just evidence. It was a story. There were screenshots of Daniel's banking app, taken from Daniel's phone and sent to Victor's. There were conversations between Victor and 2 other men, a network of 3 people who had been running this scheme across at least 4 victims in Lagos and 1 in Abuja. There were photos of mobile wallet dashboards showing incoming transfers. There was a chat thread titled simply D, and in that thread, Victor had mapped out Daniel's daily routine, his bank name, his approximate savings, and the window of time each night when Daniel was deepest asleep. The thread had been started 5 weeks after Victor moved into the flat. The plan had been deliberate from the beginning. Patient. Cold. Calculated. Victor's composed exterior shattered when the inspector began reading the messages aloud. He tried first to explain, then to minimize, then to beg. He said Daniel would understand if he just let him explain. He said he had been in a desperate situation. He said the friendship was real, that he had genuinely needed help and things had gone too far. Inspector Adikana let him speak without interrupting. When he was finished, she said quietly, for other people. Not just Daniel. The 2 accomplices were picked up within 3 days. The mobile wallet accounts were traced and frozen. Of the 472,000 naira, 311,000 was recovered. The rest had already been spent. Daniel sat in Inspector Adikana's office when she told him the full picture. He did not cry. He did not rage. He just sat very still and looked at the wall for a long time. Grace was beside him, her hand in his. When Adikana finished, Daniel asked only one question: how long had he been planning it? She told him. 5 weeks after moving in. Daniel nodded slowly. He thought about all the meals they had shared in those 5 weeks. The conversations. The laughter. He thought about Victor sitting across from him the morning after the theft, drinking his malt, smiling. He thought about how he had almost not reported it because he did not want to be wrong about someone he loved. The thought made him feel something he had no word for, something between grief and fury and a deep, exhausted sadness. Victor was charged with 3 counts: electronic fraud, unauthorized access to financial data, and conspiracy. His trial began 4 months later. Daniel testified. He was calm on the stand. He spoke clearly and without emotion, which somehow made everything feel more devastating than tears would have. When the verdict was read, guilty on all 3 counts, Daniel stood outside the courtroom in the afternoon sun and felt nothing shift. He had expected relief. It did not come. Grace held his arm and said, "It's over." Daniel looked at the sky and said softly, "It doesn't feel like it." Some wounds close. Some simply learn to carry themselves differently. And Daniel, who had believed that loyalty was the one thing money could never buy, now understood something harder and truer, that betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes carrying a smile, slipping down the hall, and waiting for you to close your eyes. Daniel recovered most of his money. He recovered his sense of caution. But the version of himself that trusted freely, the man who opened his door without thinking, that version was gone. And perhaps that is the real cost of betrayal, not what is taken, but what you can never fully give again. The lesson is simple, and it is painful. Not every person who knows your name knows your worth. Some people study you not to love you, but to use you. And sometimes, the most dangerous information you will ever give someone is not your password. It is your trust. Some betrayals never fully heal. Now tell me, what would you have done? Would you have confronted Victor that first morning? Or would you have doubted yourself, the way Daniel did? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this story moved you, please like and subscribe to Stories by the King. This is Stories by the King, where every truth demands to be heard.